All right, welcome to CMMC Unacknowledged, where we answer the unanswered questions that were asked during the monthly CMMC-AB town hall meetings. My name is Todd Stanton. I'm the Regional Sales Manager for all things CMMC at Etactics. As always, I'm joined by Ty Wittenberg. Ty is the Senior Information Assurance Manager at Ray & Associates. Welcome, Ty.
Hey, thanks for having me, Todd.
My pleasure. All right, our question for this episode is CMMC 2.0 reintroduced the concept of self-assessments and self-attestations. So how can companies participating in the defense industrial base identify if they will be allowed to self-attest to their cybersecurity requirements, or if they'll be required to undergo one of these new third-party assessments?
So another great question as always. Self-assessments and self-attestation is pretty unique. So I would say that, all the way up to maturity level 2, you can still self-assess and attest. There's a portion of 2, maturity level 2, which is called advanced, where depending on what type of contractual agreements you're in with, an organization, you might have to have additional validation by a certified third-party assessor, or the DIBCAC, right? So if you're only looking at federal contract information for maturity level 1, right, which is foundational, it's only looking at, the 17 domains and controls, family of controls. I think you're going to be okay for a self-assessment. If you're nervous about that, which I've found with lots of organizations, or some organizations that have partnered with us after they've done a self-assessment themselves, a lot of times what you find out is when those organizations don't know, they just go, well, I guess we're doing that, and that's a dangerous place to be. So if in doubt, partner with, an Etactics, or partner with a Ray & Associates, or any RPO out there for that matter, to help you navigate those waters, because there are some nuances that, when you're in the minutia of doing the work every day, you're not thinking about your network architecture and how it makes sure that you're compliant.
So if you have federal contract information but no controlled unclassified information, level 1 self-assessment, self-attestation, no third-party assessment. Let's talk a little bit more about this level 2 bifurcation of contracts that have controlled unclassified information. I guess that's one of the big gray areas right now with the release of 2.0, where they're saying some contracts, depending on the criticality nature of the contracts in relation to national security, will still require this third-party assessment through a certified third-party assessor organization within the CMMC ecosystem. But then others, will be allowed to continue to self-assess and self-attest. Yep. So can you give us some examples? I know it probably a speculation at this point, but of the difference between companies that have controlled unclassified information that would or would not have to do that third-party assessment?
Yeah, so I don't think that we're talking about top secret clearance, but we are talking about some things that are probably very unique and germane to our national defense with our armed forces that might have some impact. And so when I heard the CEO of the CMMC-AB, Matthew Travis, speak, he talked about 2 priority levels: a high priority level 2 contract, and then a lower priority level 2 contract. And he shared that the lower level 2 contracts may only require the DIB self-assessment or self-attestation, whereas the higher priority level 2 contracts will require certification by third-party assessment organizations. I'm interested to see where the clarity comes for that. But if I were to put my own speculation on it, it has a lot to do with anything that's in the defense industrial base that's potentially part of a weaponized program or part of, a NASA program space. that is, pretty unique and not necessarily classified, but specific to the missions that particular equipment helps to serve. So I think you'll see that higher priority level, that information will trickle down to those primes, the Northrop Grummans of the world, the other BAE high level contractors out there that subcontract out. And then, they will probably put that in the language of the bid, that you will need to have a third-party self-assessment, or not self-assessment, but third-party assessment in place if you were to bid on that contract.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up some interesting scenarios in the potential for a contractor to, the first contract they bid on that has CUI, maybe it's related to the manufacturing of military boots, and not really a weapon system. Does it have control and classified information? Yes, but that company is kind of granted an opportunity to self-attest at a maturity level 2 to perform work at that contract. That same company, now is making a weapon system or participating in a supply chain that makes a weapon system, and that contract requires a third-party assessment. But they already have a level 2 certification issued by the accreditation body. So I guess there are some interesting scenarios where same company, different types of contracts, does having the certification at that maturity level 2 grant them the ability to work on contracts that would have otherwise required a third-party assessment, or at that point are they required to go back and get that third-party assessment? I think it raises some interesting scenarios and questions that I think, I'm not going to ask you to speculate or answer, but those are the types of questions that I think the accreditation body and DoD need to help provide some clarity on, because I can certainly imagine those scenarios coming to fruition when this actually launches, right?
Yeah. So look, I was talking with another partner who's an RP, and they were just sharing, we may have done away with the 5 maturity levels, but to some degree, even though it only says CMC 2.0 and there's only 3, technically there's 4, right? It doesn't say that, but technically there's 4. And so in that particular regards, I think the DoD will need to provide some clarity. I think we'll see that once the law is passed, that puts this in place here, over the next, I should say, 8 to 24 months now, for the new CMMC 2.0.
But I think, reverting back to self-assessment for federal contract information is a big win for CMMC going live. I think that, most organizations at that level are breathing a collective sigh of relief that they don't have to pay for a third-party assessment. And I think, DoD has kind of acknowledged that it was a risk analysis, right? What's the cost and the impact of requiring these organizations, a lot of which are smaller, medium businesses, that, $5,000 assessment is not really something that they could afford to budget. So I think that's going to help us get over the hump of implementation. So I think overall, it was a smart move by DoD to try to move this thing forward. And I think the details in terms of that bifurcation and, to your point, there really being 4 levels, because maturity level 2 is really the bifurcated self-attested versus self-assessed or versus third-party assessed. And then what's the split on that? How is that going to be determined? We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, most definitely. I'm waiting with bated breath.
Well, hopefully we'll know soon. Potentially by the time this podcast is released. Well, thank you as always, Ty.
Yeah, no worries.